Since the winter meetings began, the Mets have been spending out their ass, bringing in guys like Justin Verlander, Jose Quintana, re-signing Brandon Nimmo, bringing in David Robertson, the works. But there are some pieces on the market still, a little underrated, overlooked, that can definitely contribute to this Mets roster. So here are 3 of the most underrated free agents still on the market that the Mets should pursue.
The Mets have obviously spent a lot of money, and these guys will not be those high echelon $20 million AV type guys. 1-year deal could be a 2-year deal with an option, but they do continue to fill the very few holes left on
a lot of the big guys are already gone, and the Mets, they've done their big spending for the most part. But like we said, the team isn't complete. So I think going with these short-term deals is the way to go. You're looking at Nimmo, Lindor, Diaz. Those are the only guys here long-term. So if you want to keep those long-term books clean, these short-term deals are the way to go.
Obviously, we know the Mets are going to keep on adding. They're already over that luxury tax, so you might as well just keep on going full force, keep adding for the short term. So let's start with Trey Mancini, where the main idea here is power. Did he have the best year in 2022? No, but he's entering a 31-year-old season. Last year, he slashed 239, 319, 391 with a 104 WRC plus in 587 plate appearances, but he definitely does play into some needs. He can play the infield, the outfield, and DH. As for some of the power bats that came off the market, guys like Josh Bell, and some guys that are still on the market like JD Martinez, and then Jose Abreu, who got completely overpaid. Trey Mancini can give you that production. He didn't do it recently, but we know he can. He's still got quite a few good years left in him.
One of the things I've liked about Trey Mancini is that he's a guy that for the majority of his career, he's been very balanced. I mean, we saw the Mets take a bit of a platoon approach last year when it came to the DH position. I mean, we saw so many different guys when it came against righties, came against lefties. The thing I've always liked about Trey Mancini is that in 2021, you're looking at a guy that had an 899 OPS against lefties. So if he could kind of tap into that this next season, I feel like that would work really well. I know the second half with Houston wasn't good. The playoffs with Houston wasn't good. His first half of the year was good. And I think, if anything, that's going to play to the Mets' advantage, because had Mancini put together a good year, he'd probably be off the board for them. He wouldn't even be considered. But I think that we look at his age compared to some other guys like a JD Martinez, get better guys that give you a better average, a better on-base percentage, sure, but they're not going to fit the team when you have so many of those guys already. We talked about it a ton of times. Trey Mancini is a nice level swing. He's able to get into some. So from that right side, definitely someone I'm interested in.
I wouldn't mind giving this guy basically what people were projecting, like what the Mets could possibly give to Conforto if they were to bring him back. I wouldn't mind doing that because you have him here short term, and this just kind of just gives the young guys such as Alvarez and Vientos and maybe even Beatty to maybe develop a little bit to the major league pitching and turn into the power protection we're hoping that they can be around Pete Alonso. But right now, this is one of those DH stopgaps. You don't really see it that much, but with a lineup that desperately needs power, this is definitely, I think, somebody that they definitely should pursue for a short-term deal.
And he's not a, like we said, not a DH where he's just going to be a DH. He can play the outfield. He can play the corner outfield. He can play first base. So Mark Canha played solid throughout the season, but now you can potentially give Mark Canha a day off and move McNeil in the left. You can put Mancini in left field to give Canha get a day off his legs, especially as he's an older player. We just don't want a power hitter that's just going to sit at DH. We want a guy who can be flexible, who can play other positions to give other guys a day off. Give Pete a day off, Marte a day off, to get some of these older vets off their feet maybe twice a week. And we're not even factoring in the right field fences are coming in. Trey does have good opposite field power.
The Mets haven't done anything to address their bench at all. And there was a point in time last year in the second half when Vogelbach, Ruff, and Vientos were all on the roster. So you had 3 guys there, and one of them was playing first base, and Ruff every now and then. This rest guys weren't even touching the field. At least Mancini could play like inside the corner outfield. They put Ruff in the outfield against Oakland. We saw how that went. It was terrible. So at least you have a little bit more of a bench than you did before. What I didn't like about the whole platoon thing is that the splits were so drastic that if the team went to a lefty early in the game, Vogelbach comes out of the game early. And then you're stuck with Darren Ruff the rest of the game. And then when they bring in righties, Ruff has to face righties, and vice versa. So what you like about Trey Mancini is that if they do go to a lefty or righty early in the game, doesn't matter. You don't have to take him out. He could play the entire game. So from a strategic standpoint, he just fits better than what all the things they're trying to be creative with Ruff and Vogelback last year.
The Mets were very interested in Mancini at the deadline. And the fact that there was rumors that there was a trade with Mancini and a reliever, we never found out. I think it was Dylan Tate was the rumored reliever. The Mets and Epler had interest in before him. Why would that change? Now, especially, why wouldn't that be more motivated to get him with no draft pick compensation and not having to give up a prospect? Why would you not be interested now when you just have to give him cash?
Now, if you were to look at some expected numbers, and I don't really like to take this completely into account, I will say that Citi Field is one of the highest expected home run numbers for Trey Mancini last year. 28 homers at Citi Field, I'm taking that for a relatively pitcher's ballpark. On the cheap, when you've already spent a lot, it does make sense. Now, the next one we have here is Ross Stripling. We've seen some rumors about the Mets being interested in him alongside guys like Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams just signed with the Nationals, which kind of sucks. I hate the Nationals right now. This definitely could replace the Trevor Williams role. And I have him on here mainly because I don't trust the health of McGill at this point. And I don't trust David Peterson at all. He's entering an age 33 season. He's coming off a 3-win year with a 3.01 earned run average and a 3.11 fielding independent pitching. He's got a rising fastball in the low 90s. He's got a gyro spin changeup with vertical tight drop. He's got a heavy cutting slider. He's got a dropping action knuckle curve and a low spin sinker four seam type of hybrid pitch.
It's not a very big secret. The Mets have a very old and injury-prone staff. The benefit of having guys like Ross Stripling and Trevor Williams where, yeah, you could stick them in the bullpen and make them the long man, but the fact of maybe you do think of a six-man rotation here where you give Stripling maybe one of Peterson and McGill and to stretch these, to not burn these guys out, to have, go to a six-man rotation. Senga's going to be $25 million. That's what it costs. Would it be smart to say half of that and then bundle with one of the two guys in this video? Let's say Chris Bassett goes elsewhere, Senga goes elsewhere. To choose, do you want just Kodai Senga at around $25 million? Or do you bundle maybe Stripling and Mancini, or Stripling our next guy, or somebody else to fill two holes for that money? If you do sign a Ross Stripling, maybe does that make you a little more active? Add another reliever. Add the bat like a Trey Mancini instead of giving the big money to Senga.
As excited as we are about Justin Verlander being here, and we already know Max Scherzer's here, there's a very good chance that one or both of them will have some form of injury at some point this season, even if it's something minor. It could be an oblique where that takes 4 to 6 weeks. So there's going to be a month where you're going to need somebody to fill in. Having somebody like Ross Stripling is perfect compared to those other guys. Like we said, will McGill be hurt at the same time? Will David Pearson be able to throw strikes? Carl Carrasco's another guy has a very high chance of getting hurt. He's got hurt every single year as a Met, and he's only getting older. So the risk becomes even more likely. So you just have to have those backup plans ready to go. And with Trevor Williams not being here, you need somebody else who's major league great that can make starts. Internally, like we said, outside McGill Pearson, there aren't prospects on the way that are pitchers that are going to come in and make starts. We saw what happened the few times the Mets tried it. We saw some guys that made starts for the Mets and how it went. It was brutal. So they have got to add to that depth. It is very, very important. It may not seem like a lot on the surface, but as the year goes along in 162, it does end up being pretty important. So he's a guy that makes so much.
I'd say a way you can compare a contract that the Mets could give to Ross Stripling, especially with what we're looking at right now, I'd say it's in the range of what they gave Jose Quintana, and also it's in the range of what Tyler Anderson got. If you're going to give him a 2-year deal, or maybe a 2-year deal with a player option, or a 2-year deal with a team option, you need that protection in the back end of the rotation. You need these starter options because a lot of these starters are just older now and they're more prone to injury. So Ross Stripling could be an ideal replacement for Trevor Williams. Now, I'm also thinking about the questionable health of Joey Lucchesi. We know that he could be a possible opener. I think he's going to be more of a bulk reliever when fully healthy, but we don't really know what they think of him. We also had conversations about maybe the Mets don't really like Joey Lucchesi that much. That brings in Ryan Yarbrough. Now, Yarbrough is a lefty. Just like Joey Lucchesi, he can be a little crafty and funky. He's a junk-throwing lefty who knows how to locate. He does remind me a lot of Alex Claudio, who had a few cups of coffee with us in 2022. He's got that tumbling cutter that caps out at about 89 to 90 miles an hour, sweeping vertical curveball, side-spinning changeup, zone-painting sinker. It's not the flashiest stuff, but it's funky. It throws guys off their rhythm. He knows how to manage contact. Not a big strikeout guy. high, but he knows how to locate.
We talk so much about, a lot of these Mets haven't been in the playoffs before. Yarbrough's a guy that has. He's had playoff success. He's pitched against the Astros. He pitched in the World Series against the Dodgers. And he's a guy that has that versatility. Like, if they want Joey Lucchesi role, that's what Yarbrough has done with Tampa Bay. He's been a bulk reliever, been an opener. I mean, he's a guy that you can make a long reliever. Like, he could just do so many different things for you. And he's so different than most of the Met pitchers on here, because one thing I always talk about is that they say so many times nowadays, third time around the order, fourth time around the order. The hitters, they know what the pitcher's going to throw now. They have such a better chance of getting hit. Well, now use a guy who's doing something completely different than what the pitcher you just faced earlier is. He's a guy that I look at more just for a strategic standpoint, just a soft tossing lefty. There's nothing flashy, but it's just weird the way he throws, and he ends up having success. You had somebody that got blown up in the first inning, second inning. You need somebody to give you 3 to 4 innings just to keep you in the game, not tire out the rest of your bullpen arms. Yarbrough's perfect for that. So he's a guy that I've liked for a long time. I think he fits really well with this team just because of how different he is than so many other pitchers that they have. So I just think on this particular team, he's a good fit.
And the fact that why not have 2 lefties in the pen? Like, yes, we brought in Brooks Raley, which is going to be, one of the best. You've used Raley in the 6th, you lose him in the 7th. At least, let's say in the 9th, if Diaz isn't available, and it's just a hypothetical, you have a second lefty, Harper, Turner, Schwarber. Pick your, someone in the Phillies. You've got those 2 lefties. You could have that second lefty to deploy in that scenario. So to have as many guys who are multi-use relievers is probably the best way for the Mets to finish out the pen. Now, you've got their high leverage guys. They have their kids that they want to build in to fill the bottom half. Anyone in this mid-rotation should be able to be flexible to go, yeah, you can use you in a high leverage spot, but also, hey, the benefit of we need an innings eater, you can do both.
Anybody that pushes David Peterson down the depth chart is a friend of mine.